Ryanair is that airline people hate so much, yet it flies over 180 million passengers a year across Europe and pulls in more than 8.7 billion in revenue, making it one of the biggest budget airlines on the planet. On paper, this should be a modern miracle of cheap travel. Tickets that cost less than your Uber ride home, planes filling the skies at every major airport, and a CEO who brags about beating expensive legacy airlines at their own game. But behind the numbers lies a lot of frustration, endless hidden fees, cramped seating, customer service nightmares, angry employee strikes, and a reputation so bad that in multiple surveys, Ryanair has been crowned Europe's most hated airline. In the next few minutes, I'm going to break down exactly why this airline has become both wildly successful and wildly despised. And by the end, you'll see how Ryanair's business model is both brilliant and deeply flawed at the same time. Now, to understand Ryanair's decline in reputation, you need to first understand how they rose so fast in the first place. When Michael O'Leary took over in the 1990s, he studied Southwest Airlines in the United States and decided to copy their model of flying cheap, no-frills planes on short-haul routes. But Ryanair didn't just copy, they went even harder. They slashed ticket prices to a level so low it seemed like a prank. You could book flights for £5 or £10 if you caught the right deal, which sounded insane compared to traditional airlines charging 10 times more. This strategy worked like magic at first, because suddenly weekend trips across Europe became possible for the average student, tourist, or worker. But here's the interesting part. When you set your brand identity around being the cheapest, customers realise cheap doesn't just mean low price, it also means low quality. Ryanair mastered the art of filling planes, but in the process they also built a reputation for discomfort, aggressive cost cutting, and squeezing passengers at every turn. This brings me to the second big reason why Ryanair is so hated, the fees. You see, that £10 ticket was never really £10. It was £10 to get a seat, but then came the torrent of fees. Want to check in at the airport instead of online? That's a fee. Want a regular cabin bag? Another fee. Want to sit next to your family instead of being randomly scattered across the plane? You guessed it, another fee. In fact, industry data shows that more than 40% of Ryanair's revenue now comes from ancillary services, which is a fancy airline term for nickel and diming you on extras. And this is where customers feel tricked, because the promise of cheap flights turns into charging you for everything else you didn't pay for in the cheap ticket. That weekend getaway flight that looked like a steal for £18 quickly balloons to £70, or even £100 once you add luggage, seats, and the basic comfort most people expect. And it's unsettling. This isn't just about money, it's about psychology, because when people feel tricked, they don't just complain, they resent the company, which leads us perfectly into the next reason. If there's one thing that truly fuels Ryanair's reputation problem, it's customer service, or really the lack of it. Ryanair has been ranked at the bottom of customer satisfaction surveys across Europe for years. In 2019, Which magazine ranked it the worst airline for the 6th year in a row, with passengers complaining about rude staff, confusing policies, and the feeling that once something went wrong, you were completely on your own. Think about this, airlines are already stressful. Delays, cancellations, weather problems, they happen everywhere. But with Ryanair, customers report that even the smallest hiccup turns into a nightmare because getting support is nearly impossible. Refunds can take months, phone calls lead nowhere, and employees on the ground often seem more focused on following rules than helping passengers. It's not just about saving money, it's about a culture where the customer often feels like an inconvenience instead of the point of the business. But here's the twist. Despite all of this, Ryanair keeps growing. Why? Well, that takes us to the role of its leadership and public image. If you've ever read about Ryanair in the news, chances are you've seen the name Michael O'Leary. He's not just the CEO, he's the loud, brash, controversial face of the airline. Some call him a genius for making Ryanair the most profitable budget airline in Europe. Others call him reckless, arrogant, and downright insulting to his own customers. O'Leary is famous for wild comments like suggesting passengers should stand on planes to fit more seats, or joking about charging people to use the bathroom mid-flight. While these were often publicity stunts, they also centered Ryanair's image as the no-nonsense, no-compassion airline. To many, it feels like Ryanair doesn't just cut costs, it takes pride in mocking the very people who buy its tickets. And yet, here's the rude shock. Under his leadership, Ryanair has grown into a fleet of over 500 aircraft and dominates European skies. So the question isn't whether Ryanair is successful, the real question is whether it can keep thriving in the long run when so many people openly hate it. And guess what? The staff aren't happy either. Over the years,
Ryanair is facing a summer storm of cancellations as pilots and cabin crews strike this week. The industrial action will see more than 50,000 customers affected.
Ryanair's pilots and cabin crew went on strike again and again. They complained about low pay, poor working conditions, and not being treated with respect. And when the staff walk out, passengers pay the price. Flights get cancelled, holidays ruined, people stranded in airports. It sent one clear message: if even Ryanair's own workers don't want to stay, why should passengers trust them with their time, their money, or their safety? And while customers and staff were already angry, Ryanair found itself fighting another battle, but this time with the law. See, Ryanair didn't just have a customer service problem, they had a law problem. Across Europe, regulations fined them again and again for misleading advertising, unfair baggage rules, and failing to properly compensate passengers. And then came the environmental criticism. Ryanair tried branding itself as the greenest airline, claiming low emissions per passenger. Activists weren't buying it. It didn't add up. How can an airline running thousands of flights a week pretend to be eco-friendly? Greenpeace called them out, and the government fined them for false claims, and the whole green PR campaign backfired. So now Ryanair wasn't just the airline passengers hated, it was also the airline politicians and activists loved to punish. And once the law turns against you, public opinion usually follows. And that brings us to the digital battlefield, where Ryanair's reputation went from bad to catastrophic. In the age of the internet, your reputation is only as good as your reviews, and Ryanair's reviews, brutal. On Trustpilot, they've been called the worst airline in the world. TripAdvisor is filled with horror stories, people swearing to never fly with them again, describing missed weddings, ruined holidays, lost baggage, and rude staff. And here's the thing, these stories go viral. Someone tweets a nightmare Ryanair experience, and within hours it's being shared thousands of times. It created a feedback loop. Even people who had never flown Ryanair believed it was awful, because online, the airline's name became a shorthand for stress, misery, and hidden charges. Once your brand becomes a joke, it's almost impossible to rebuild that trust. And yet, Ryanair's paradox is that people still kept booking. And guess what? Despite all of this, the fake fees, the poor service, the PR disasters, the strikes, the fines, the bad reviews, Ryanair is still the biggest airline in Europe. Millions of people still fly with them every year. Why? Because when you need a cheap ticket and you see that £19 flight to Rome, you click it. You grumble, you roll your eyes, you swear you'll never do it again, but you still go. Ryanair has locked itself into this strange paradox. It's the most hated airline, but it's the most flown. And that's the story of Ryanair. It's not a single mistake that brought them down in reputation, it's a chain reaction. From hidden fees to bad service, from arrogant leadership to unhappy staff, from legal trouble to online mockery. They built their empire on price, but they sacrificed trust along the way. So to sum it up, Ryanair's decline in reputation comes down to four main things: their ultra low cost trap that sacrifices comfort for cheap seats, their endless hidden fees that make passengers feel tricked, their customer service that frustrates people when things go wrong, and a CEO whose bold personality often adds fuel to the fire. And yet, the company is still flying higher than ever, which proves something fascinating. People may hate Ryanair, but they also keep booking it because at the end of the day, low prices win. But now I want to hear from you. What's your worst Ryanair experience? Was it the hidden fees, the cramped seats, or maybe something completely different? Drop your story in the comments below, because I know this is a topic where almost everyone has an opinion. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more deep dives into business stories, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.